What's up everybody? Dan here with Dan and Sarah Makers, and we're coming back at you with another Tool Tuesday. It is a crisp about 28 degrees this morning, and as you can tell, it's a little bit different. I'm not in the garage. I'm not doing our standard Tool Tuesday inside. So I'm outside and we are going to look at a new tool that's a little bit different than the others. What we're going to talk about today is going to be this Makita 36 volt battery powered string trimmer. I've always referred to these as weed eaters because that's just what I grew up with, and that was a brand name, kind of like calling a worm drive or hypoidal style saw a or skill saw, because Skill was kind of one of the leading companies that made those. Not everyone's a skill saw. We just call them skill saws, just like I just called these weed eaters all my life. So this is a fairly new Makita tool. It's only been around for a couple years, so not necessarily that new, but new enough. I've had it for a little while now, about a year I believe, so I've had a chance to use it quite a bit around the house, and now we've had a chance to get out here to the other house with the pasture, the meadow as we like to call it, and getting into some deeper mixed material. It's a straight shaft string trimmer. It's got a brushless motor that's mounted in the head, and it's got some features that are really cool. Hopefully I can demonstrate them all today, but it takes just standard 18 volt batteries. It takes 2 of them, which may or may not be a drawback in your opinion. I like it because these batteries work in all my cordless tools that I have, and they seem to be fine. You know, it's nice not to have, you know, 4 or 5 different types of batteries depending on which tool you're using. So these batteries work in pretty much everything. So as far as the weed eater goes, my general body, like the overall build of it, it seems pretty good, durable. The balance is a little bit heavy on the tail end, especially with the batteries in it where the handle is. When you're holding it, it's not quite so bad. You don't feel like there's a lot of weight. It doesn't require much effort to lift this end to get it to be up there, so most of the weight feels like it's on the handle, more of a balancing point at that point. For me, I feel like I have to crouch down just a little bit to get the head on the ground and level, but that's just me. There might be, I would have to look into it. I don't believe it does. I don't think there's any adjustability in the head pivoting this way, which might not be a bad idea to incorporate that kind of feature in. A couple of the nice built-in features on this weed eater: not only do you have the fuel gauges or battery power gauge on the batteries themselves, you also have a dual gauge here that when you push the button, it'll light up and show you the status of each battery. It's got a power switch here, which you press and hold to go on and off. It'll go into one of 2 speeds. Your first speed, it's indicated by a rabbit, so that's a higher speed. You push the button again and it'll go into a lower speed, but it shows a turtle. So say you're dealing with something where you don't want to be flinging bark chips around or rocks or something like that, or you want to be just slightly quieter, that would be the other feature. The third kind of control on the control panel here would be the head reverse. Because this is a battery powered motor and it's not a gasoline driven engine, you can push this button and spin it the other way just as easily as you can spin it forward. So when you get into taller grass, like hopefully what I'm going to hit here, and I can show you, if you ever do get grass bound up around the head, you can actually stop the weed eater, hit this reverse button, pull the trigger, the head will run in reverse, and the few times I've actually had to use it, it throws all the grass off. You take your hand off the trigger, it resets itself, and you pull the trigger again and it goes in forward. So that's a really nice feature. The only thing that I'm not a big fan on, and we'll show you here in a minute, is loading the string on the head. It's a little bit more complicated, and there are a few little things that are confusing and challenging about it. I don't have a ton of weed eaters. I'm not a lawn care guy, so maybe this is fine compared to all the others out there, but I'm not a big fan of it. So we'll take a look at that here and load some new string on. I've got 2 fresh batteries before we start cutting some grass. I've taken both batteries out just for safety's sake. The head itself, it's a dual string. I've got some, I think it's just the string trimmer line. I think I found it at Home Depot or something. I think it's Shakespeare. So it's a kind of a twisted aggressive cutting string, so it cuts a little bit better. I'm really impressed with it out here. As far as asphalt and concrete, like if you're edging at a house or something, it isn't quite as nice in my opinion. It wears out quite quickly. So the head itself, it just has two tabs that you have to push in, squeeze in to pull the actual spool off the top to reload the string. So we'll set that down. It's got the outer cap, which holds the spool. So this is the part that's exposed. It's got two metal inserts that the string actually comes through, so it's not plastic, so that should hold up quite well. No problem with that. And then the spool itself, it's because it is a dual string, it's got dual drums. Like I said, we'll put some new string on here just to start out since we're almost out. The challenging part that I don't like about this, we'll see if we can get it to focus, get my face out of frame. Let's see here. Okay, you have both a right hand and a left hand wind embossed on there, which to me, that makes you think that you could do it right hand or left hand depending on what. Does the top drum go left hand? Does the bottom go right hand? You know, they're both coming off different ways. The fact that it shows both of those is really confusing to me. I actually had to go look on the directions to try and figure out why it wasn't working for me correctly. Yes, I went ahead and tried to do it without looking at the directions, and I had issues. So on this one here, maybe in other countries here in the US, they say left hand is what you do, and both of your strings rotate around to the left. So I've got a piece of string line already cut. They say about 10 feet. I just do 2 arm lengths, which is probably going to be more like 12 feet. But I'd rather get a little bit more string on there and avoid having to do this multiple times. So we'll unspool this. Been playing with the spaghetti monster quite a bit this weekend. So we double the spool over, or basically halve it, find the center. They say to have the ends offset about 4 inches and then get the center. So there's my center point there. Put a little bit of a fold in there. In between the 2 drums there's a notch that you hook your line on, and then on this one, like I said, I'm rotating and spinning, spooling both left hand around the drum. So this is the part that I'm not a big fan on this weed eater. Again, you know, this might be par for course for all of them, but we'll just spool this. Sorry about the massive amount of airplane noise in the background if you can hear it. Not. Just one little prop engine plane. We're far enough away from everything that there aren't very many planes here. At the other place, a lot of planes there. But planes is money, so that's good. Good for me, at least. So, spin this line on here nice and tight. If you don't spool it up tight enough, you run the issue of the string trimmer line sinking in to the previous lays of cable around the drum and getting locked in there. So I take one of these, now that they're both up, and then the other one, and I hook them on the opposite sides. So that's where they're trying to get you to have that 4-inch offset, so they're pretty much the same as the other cable has to go around an extra half rotation. So they have these little hooks to help hold that line in place. So this is where I fumble with it a lot. I'll hold it, kind of clamp it so it doesn't pop out. I get the head here and I drop it in so that those little hooks are in line with the side outlets, and I'll fold each string trimmer line into that and try really hard not to have it all in spool on me, because that tends to happen a lot. So now I've got them threaded in. I'm holding it again. This is the tricky part. I usually almost always have to do it a couple times. And then we very, very carefully drop it in. Again, hopefully it doesn't loosen up or unspool too much. I think we did pretty good. So there's a little bit extra string there. That'll cut itself off on the cutter here once we get started. Fresh batteries, fresh load of string. I'll hit the power button, hold it down. The rabbit comes on. That's a high speed. So we run it, we cut the string line, and now let's get into it. All right, so I was really trying to blow into some of that taller grass there quite aggressively to try and see if I could get a bunch of it caught up around the head and display or demonstrate that reverse feature. It didn't do it. I was really digging into it and it didn't do much. The string trimmer line is almost exactly the same length as when I cut it. I haven't advanced it. Cut maybe, I don't know, a good 100 square feet of fairly decent grass here, and it just plows through it really, really well. The end of the lines are a little bit thinner. They kind of taper down over time, and it cuts through woodsy kind of material, smaller stuff pretty well. All right, so in that last area, I tried to bog the weed eater down and show or demonstrate the reverse feature on the head. I was really plowing into it and really wasn't having any issues with it clogging up the head. So unfortunately, we haven't seen it yet. I've moved to an area over here by the pond. This is some pretty tall, I mean, chest height grass, and it's pretty wet and there's frost on it right now. But we'll see how we do on that. With the 100 square feet of that decent height grass over in the area by the pump house, there's very, very little erosion or wear on the string trimmer lines themselves. It cuts through woodsy material pretty well. As far as the longevity of this stuff that I've been using here, like I said, it's nothing special. I didn't go to any specialty lawn care store and, you know, get some titanium super whatever oxide trimmer line that they have out there. But it works really, really well in just grass. Light woodsy material like little saplings, brush, stuff like that, it actually cuts through surprisingly well. We've got a lot of low kind of woodsy bush type plants that sprout up quite a bit on some of these hills here. So we might chop some of those down and just take a look at that. But we'll plow into this big deep portion here and see how it goes. Still no jams. The string's about 4 inches long, so I'll advance that. So kind of for a final area to look at, this is the area where we have, or an area where we have a lot of these small woodsy type plants growing up broadleaf. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but right now they're all turning red. I don't know if I necessarily want a nice ground cover of this stuff everywhere, but it's a good example that this weed eater will also take care of some of these thicker wooded type bushes. So we'll plow through some of these here. I do want to save the pine trees though, so we're not going to plow through. All right, I'm staring into the sun as it's rising up here, but I should have good lighting. So we've tried the weed eater out in some intermediate grass, some lower grass that's been cut with a brush cutter earlier this year. We cut some really thick stuff that was really tall, and then we got into some woodsy, shorter stuff. All of those, I would say this weed eater cut extremely well for not only a non-gas weed eater, but an electric one, and on top of that being just a battery powered one, not having a constant 110 volt supply. It did incredibly well. The string trimmer line, like I said, it's not probably the cream of the crop, but it does really well. I'm impressed with it. I tried really hard at several different locations to jam up the head so that we could show the reverse feature. Wasn't able to do that, so I guess that's good. It's kind of like the last ditch effort. The times I have jammed it up, you hit that button, you pull the trigger, the head runs in reverse, and within about a second, all that grass just comes literally, I'm not kidding, flying off the cutter head and unjams itself. You take your hand off the trigger, you pull it again, and it goes right back into forward, and you're cutting. So even when I was bogging it down really heavily in some of the tall grass, the string trimmer line is still spinning, it's still cutting, and it's still doing something. So that's impressive. As far as the woodsy stuff, it erodes the trimmer line a lot faster, but it still does a really good job. I mean, it maybe something slightly smaller than a wooden pencil diameter is about its maximum. Of course, that depends on if it's green, if it's dead, and the type of wood or material that you're cutting plays a large factor into whether you're going to actually cut it or not. But for this kind of scrub that we have here, did really well. So I didn't say it previously at the beginning of the video, but the model is the XRU 09. It's a 36 volt, so it's got two 18 volt batteries in series, sorry, not parallel, in series, so you add the voltage up. It has a 5,000 RPM rating at its slow speed and 6,500 RPM at its high speed, so it really buzzes through material quite well. As far as just power, I am really impressed with it. I would highly recommend this. I bought this, I believe it was around $400, but it came with the string trimmer. It came with a quote-unquote free 4.5-inch brushless angle grinder, the Makita. It came with two 5 amp hour batteries and a single 2-bay battery charger, so you plug both batteries in at once. It'll charge these batteries in probably about 40-45 minutes, so extremely fast charge time. As far as the $400 price tag, my opinion going into it was if this string trimmer is absolute garbage, which turns out it's far from that in my opinion. I have a couple batteries that are at least $100 a piece. I have the 2-bay charger, which is again about $100, and then I have the cordless grinder, which is going to be maybe $80 for the bare tool. So all in all, you have a bunch of accessories that would work for all your other Makita stuff, which I have. If you have, great. So it wouldn't have been that great of a loss if this was no good. But I'm really impressed with it. The couple things I'm not super impressed with are the balance when you're trying to carry it, you know, you throw it over your shoulder. Once you're actually holding it like this, it's great. I would like maybe to have the head be able to tip. There's no drivetrain in here, so there's no reason they couldn't have an adjustable head. So for taller people or shorter people, you can adjust that head so it's cutting flat or perpendicular to the ground, depending on what height you're actually holding this at. And then the third is just the winding the trimmer line on the head. It's a little challenging. But all in all, this is a really awesome tool. I really like it. So until next time, this is Dan with Dan and Sarah Makers. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and thumbs up and comment. Those are all great things for us. And until next time, get out there and do something.